I'm Gemma.
I'm Emma.
And this is Readiculous.
Hi, Internet. We're back for our March wrap-up. We're going to talk a little bit about the books that we really liked this month and mention all the books that we read, which you can also find on our Goodreads. We'll link to our Goodreads in the description below.
So the first book that I'm going to talk about is actually the last book I read. Full disclosure, I only started it in March. I tried to finish it, but I started on the last day and like pretty late in the last day, and it's 504 pages, so
A little long.
I only got
one day.
Yeah. I only read like 42% of it, and I was tired and had to go to bed. But so Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman is the follow-up to Scythe. It's the second in a trilogy. The last book is coming out in like a year-ish. I think January or something. But this was also really good. I was really, like I said in the TBR video, I was really excited to read it to like explore the Thunderhead more. And you get a lot of like the Thunderhead's perspective in this, and it's like so cool. Yeah, I feel like if I wasn't tired when I started it on the first night, then I for sure would have finished it because it's so good. And I obviously gave it 5 stars.
So 2 of the books that I read in March were from my TBR. I read Meet Cute, which was an anthology that I really liked. I also read Love, Life, and a List. I gave them both 4 stars. Meet Cute had a few hit or miss stories for me, which is why I only gave it 4 stars. It did have some 5-star stories, but some I didn't really like at all. Love, Life, and the List was going really well, but I did not love the end. So I just knocked off 1 star for that. I also read Rookie on Love, which is another anthology collection of short stories, poems, essays. There are some comics in it, all sorts of different stuff. And I really liked that one too. I also gave that 4 stars.
This book is called Humans in A to Z by Matt Haig, and it's companion book to The Humans by Matt Haig. I read this first without fully realizing that it was like a companion to The Humans, which is fine because this is a lexicon. So it's like just giving definitions, and it was hilarious. Gave it 4 stars, I think. Let's check. Yep.
4 stars.
This was a 4 star. And then the actual book, I also gave 4 stars. It was really funny. And so it's about this like alien that comes to Earth and has to like take over the body of this guy. And then it's like all his observations while he's here. So it's interesting to see like the things that humans do and say and take for granted through the eyes of someone who's not from this planet. And so you get like these like perspectives on things that are like everyday life to you and you don't really think about, but it's like really insightful and like strange, but it's still like really heartwarming and like gives you a lot to think about.
So one of my favorite books that I read this month was The Poet X. I gave it 5 stars. I really liked the main character in this book. She's really, really relatable. I'm not even in high school anymore, and I found her relatable. It's just such a good story, and the way everything develops and the way the character develops is so good. And I just think that a lot of the things that the main character deals with are things that people in general can relate to and kind of see themselves in. So I definitely would recommend that book and really liked it, and I'll probably read it again a bunch of times too.
So I read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. It's a novella. So it's short, but it packs quite a punch. It's 76 pages, and like they're small pages, and and some of the pages are just like a little picture, so it's not even 76 pages. And like I cried like so much, and I was like shocked because I was like, how is this so short and like so moving and like so. Yeah, so I know Emma recommended it in another video, and now I am also recommending it. Like, don't miss out on this, but like be ready to cry. 5 stars.
So one book that I read this month that I've actually been meaning to read for a while, I think it was one of my previous TBR books, was Another Day by David Levithan. I read Every Day and I really liked it. I didn't love Another Day quite as much. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I just didn't really think it was as interesting of a story from Rhiannon's point of view versus the point of view of the first book. Basically, you get the same timeline from the first book, but through the other point of view, which I thought was going to be more interesting than it was. For a while, I thought about giving it a 2-star rating, but as I got about halfway through, it did pick up a bit, so I gave it 3 stars. If you really like the first book, Every Day, I think Another Day is worth giving a read, especially since there's a 3rd book coming out later this year, but on its own, I wouldn't necessarily love Another Day, especially if I didn't know the story through Every Day first.
The next book is actually the first book I read this month, Autobiography off my TBR by Christina Lauren, which I didn't find out was like a writing partnership until I was done the book and reading the little author flap on the back, and it's like Christina Lauren is the combined pen name, and I was like,
what?
My mind was like, pardon? I don't know how they write, like if they write it all together or what they do, but like you can't tell that it's like 2 different voices, so like their partnership is like a really good one because it's like seamless. So there's no oh, this seems like it's written, like this part seems written by a different voice or something. Like it's not that. So I gave this 5 stars.
So the other books that I read this month were Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, which I gave 5 stars. We talked about that in another video, which we can link down below in the description if you haven't watched it yet. Also read You Do You by Sarah Knight. I really liked her other books. This one I only gave 3.5 stars because I just didn't find it as relevant to me as the other books, and especially after reading the other books, I didn't feel like this one gave me enough new information to really love it. I read The Upside of Unrequited, which I gave 4 stars. I really liked it. Gemma mentioned it in another video because she also liked it, so you can always check. She loved it. Sorry. So you can always check that video out. We can link that below as well so you can see what she thought of it. And I read Still Me, which is the 3rd book in the Me Before You series. So there's Me Before You, After You, and now there is Still Me. I think I actually would have preferred Still Me as a standalone book. If I was just reading that and that was how I was getting introduced to the characters, I would have liked it even more than I did. I ended up giving it 4 stars instead of 5 just because I felt like little parts of it were just not as enjoyable for me, but I did really like it, so I gave it 4 stars. I also listened to a bunch of audiobooks. You can check out my Goodreads to see what they were. It was pretty much all nonfiction, and I didn't really love any of them except for We Should All Be Feminists, which I gave 5 stars.
March was a slow reading month for me, I guess. Like, I read more, like the same amount of books in March this year than I read all of last year, but it felt slow in relation to like the first 2 months. But so my other 2 books, I did manage to read the 2 books off of my TBR. So Boy Meets Depression by Kevin Brill. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book on my TBR was 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't like great. Obviously I gave it 3 stars, but it wasn't like, I don't know. I didn't really like it, but it wasn't like bad enough to warrant giving it like a 2 star. And then I only did 1 audiobook this month, but worth it because it was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, because it was the American version, which I didn't actually realize until I started listening to it, and I was like, wait a minute.
These words are all wrong.
Yeah, but they changed like some stuff, and then I like pulled out my book and was like reading along for a little bit, and like they just changed like random stuff that doesn't mean anything and doesn't change anything, and I don't understand. Like it's so weird, but obviously like it was good.
So one book that was on my TBR was The Queen's Rising, which I actually did start in March. I just haven't finished it yet. It's kind of going slowly for me just because I keep reading it at weird times. I really like it so far and I want to keep reading, but every time I really start getting into it, I'm really tired because it's late at night. But I should be done soon, and so far I'm really liking it. So of course, you can always follow us on Goodreads. Those links are in the description below, along with links to our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where our username is @ReadiculousYT. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
I look like a T-Rex with a keyboard.